What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be trying to make something out of nothing using some scrap metal that we had laying around. If you guys seen a video or two back, we did a review on the Harbor Freight 30-inch sheet metal brake, and spoiler alert, we broke it. So we're going to try to make our own sheet metal brake using some scrap metal and our Harbor Freight press. If you guys aren't already, please think about subscribing and ringing that bell. That way you get notified anytime we put out a video with the GTO, the Duramax, or the Hellcat. Let's jump right into today's video. Alright guys, so now that we've gotten through the intro, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're working with. So as you can see, we've got some pretty rusty metal here. We dug it out of the scrap pile out back. This is all 3/16 angle iron, and then we've got some pretty thick flat plate here. Not sure the thickness, but we will find that out after. And then we've got a pipe. Not sure if it's going to be the right diameter for what we need, but we will find that out when we get there. So the plan is to take a couple pieces of angle iron. We will cut them down to size when we figure out what size that is. We will weld them together like you see here, and then we will have another piece of angle iron that is the same length, and we will weld the flat plate up here with something for the press, the beam on the press to sit in. And in theory, we should be able to put a piece of sheet metal right here. This will be on the press, and when you start pressing down, it should force that sheet metal into this bend, in effect creating a bend. So we should be good to go there. Let's see what happens with that. We are using 3/16 angle iron. Not sure if that's going to be thick enough for what we're trying to do, but we will find out when we get there. We're going to be using the Harbor Freight 20-ton press. It's been a pretty good little press. I've used it for a lot of automotive stuff, pressing wheel bearings and things like that. So I think that's going to be perfectly fine up to the task. So let's go ahead and start taking some measurements and see what we've got to build. We've just got to clean these things all up. And while we're doing that, we've got our plate set up here. I think we're going to cut a rectangle out of it, probably about 6" by 7.5", and we will center it right here and weld it on. We're going to have to clean all this stuff up, so we're going to hit it with a wire wheel, use the belt sander where we need to, and then start getting it prepped for welding. So let's get this plate cut. Alright guys, so as you've seen, we've got our plate cut out here, pretty heavy duty steel, and I'm not sure what's on it, if it's just heavy mill scale, but it didn't want to clean up that well, even with a flap wheel. I think it'll be fine. The welder should blow through it. We also took a wire wheel to our angle iron. Now we're going to head over to the belt sander. We're using the Bauer belt sander. If you guys want to see a review and a comparison between this Bauer and our Century machine belt sander, go ahead on the channel and check it out. But we're going to be using it to face this up. I'm going to try to square this plate up a little bit better, and then we will also hit these where we're going to be welding and where they need to fit together nicely. So let's go ahead and fire that thing up and get everything prepped for welding. Alright guys, so we went ahead and got our angle iron cut down to 19 inches so that we have a little bit of room to work with on the edges for making whatever we want to use as a locator and stuff for the upper and lower piece on the press. But I think what we're going to get ready to do now is I think I'm just going to very lightly tack these two bottom pieces together, and then we will set those in the press, set our top piece on top, and put a little piece of like 1/8" aluminum or something in there that we can try to bend real quick, because I'm not sure if we're going to have to weld these tight together like I have them here, which the other piece of angle iron fits perfectly in there, but I'm wondering if when we're trying to bend something, if it's not going to allow us to get a nice smooth edge like we're looking for, in which case we might have to separate these a little bit, probably not that far, but we might have to put some sort of gap in there so that the metal has somewhere to go when you're trying to bend it. Not positive. Like I said, I've never made something like this before, so we're just figuring it out as we go. So I'd rather just tack them together, try it out. If it works, great, we can finish weld it. If it does not work how we want it, we can always just cut our little tacks and reevaluate and move on from there. So let's get set up here. We'll probably tack those together and give this thing a try. Alright guys, so you've seen we took our little test run there a minute ago, and it worked out really well. Our aluminum bent up super easy, looks really good. Nice 90-degree bend, didn't try to rip the aluminum at all. So I'm super happy with how that worked out. This is still currently only tacked. So now that we know everything's working, we can go ahead and finish weld that at some point. And we are also going to start building our locator for the press over here. I think it's also going to help because it's going to tie these all together on both sides with that flat stock that we're going to use, so that's going to strengthen it up a bit too. This is one of the few things that we actually had to buy for this project. Everything else was scrap. We went with 1/4 inch thick, 1.5 flat stock, and like I said, we're just going to weld it up here, make some legs that come off to locate it in the press. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Alright guys, so we've got our flat stock here. We want to go ahead and make the 2 pieces for each end. So we're going to make 1 piece for right here, and then same thing on this side, one's going to go right here. We want those to be about 4 1/8 long so that we can weld another piece going this way and have it locate on the press itself. So I went ahead and made a mark at 4 1/8, and then we went ahead and made another mark at 8 1/4. But when we set up for our first one, we'll set our little stock stop that I made for the bandsaw up so that we can make a nice consistent piece so that they both are the same. So let's go ahead and set the bandsaw up and cut these things down. Alright guys, so we've got our 2 pieces here. We're going to go ahead and head over to the belt sander, clean these things up, and then get ready to tack them on. So let's clean them up. Alright guys, so you see now we made these pieces. I think we're going to change that idea up just a little bit. It's going to work out a little bit better this way, I think. Instead of using those there, I found some smaller angle iron, a little bit smaller than the 3/16 stuff that we were using, and I think we're going to cut those and use them there just like that. So we'll cut these to the same length that we cut our straight pieces here, which was 4 1/8, I believe. And then we will use the pieces that we already cut. We'll make 2 more just like this, and we will weld them on at the end of our angle iron that we're going to put right here, and these will actually become our locators for the side of the press. I think it's going to work out much better that way. Alright guys, so we got the angle iron cleaned up. We're getting set up right now. I'm going to go ahead and tack that one, then we'll flip it around and tack that one. We measured and got them centered up so that they are centered in relation to the valley here, the valley plate I'm going to call it. So we're going to go ahead and tack those, and then we can start building our standoffs for the press to center it on the press itself, and we can keep going from there, and we'll just keep building on it. So let's get it tacked up. Alright guys, so now we got the two pieces of angle iron tacked on the end, we can go ahead and make our little standoffs that are going to go right here. So you can see I've got it clamped down so that that's going to be nice and flush. So I'm going to just go ahead and just quick tack there and there, do that on all four, and then we'll bring it over and make sure it fits in the press. Alright guys, so you've seen how we got this all tack welded up. We went ahead and set it in the press and everything's fitting good except for these are a little bit longer than I wanted them. So we're going to go ahead and take 1 inch off them. Originally I think I cut each one of these pieces at 4 1/8. So we're going to take 1 inch off. So if you guys are cutting it, cut them at 3 1/8. So we've got it set up here in the bandsaw. Let's go ahead and see if we can get these things cut off. Alright guys, you can see now we've got it set in the press here, and you can see that our little legs only come to about a little over halfway of the width of this beam, which works out good because now we won't have to lower the table as far to get this in on an angle to lock it in. So that'll be nice. So now we're going to take it out and figure out what we want to do next. Alright guys, so now that we've got these legs cut down, I'm super happy with how that came out. We are pretty much ready to finish weld. I went ahead and used just some regular Hobart anti-spatter, like nozzle protection stuff, and sprayed it in the V here where the bending is going to be going on, so we don't really have to worry about any little BBs from the MIG sticking in there and grinding those out later. So we're going to go ahead and finish weld right here along these little corners, and then we can flip it over. We will weld this up, weld in the valleys here in the V's, and then we're also going to go ahead and weld inside here on both sides. I want to get all this welding finished up so that when we get our rod and our top piece set up for it to ride on, we don't have to worry about anything getting warped when we weld it. So let's go ahead and start sticking this metal together. Alright guys, so we got this thing all welded up here. I'm going to go ahead and grind some of these welds down. They are some of the ugliest welds I have ever laid, so don't bash me too hard on those. Trying to learn welding with one hand, smashed my fingers up pretty good yesterday on another project. So I've been trying to weld one-handed today, and it did not turn out the best, but it is some welds. So we're going to go ahead and get the grinder set up and get this thing cleaned up so it sits nice and flush, and then we can go test fit it one more time and start working on the top piece. Alright guys, so we went ahead and took this thing out of the press. I threw a 2x4 in there because it's a lot thicker than any metal we are ever going to try to bend with this thing. You can see I've got a piece of angle iron right here. We're going to do something like that to weld our piece of pipe to, so that when we weld our round stock down in here, the pipe can ride on it. And this will give us something to weld the pipe to and help locate it where it needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and take some quick measurements. We'll chalk the round stock up in the bandsaw, get that cut, tack that on, and then figure out how we want to tackle the guides for the top piece here with the pipe. So let's go ahead and get that stuff cut. Alright guys, 7 inches will be more than enough. So let's go ahead and cut 2 pieces of round stock at 7 inches apiece. Alright guys, so we got our round stock tacked in place. We found this 5/8 inside diameter pipe outside. That's why we went with 5/8 round stock. We need to find a way to fasten a small piece of this to this top press plate so that it can ride on the round stock. That's what will keep this located into the bottom press plate. So I found these pieces of scrap angle iron kicking around. I think we're going to go ahead and use those, and then we will just cut a probably 2 to 3 inch section of this pipe that we have, weld it onto here, then weld this onto the top plate so that it can ride on that and keep everything centered up. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a couple pieces of this, then we'll mock that stuff up and get that stuff tacked as well. Alright guys, so now that we've got everything tacked together here, I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and raise this up to like about here, and then put a block of wood under it to hold it up, and then we'll finish weld the round stock and the pipe that we're using for the guides. And I'm going to go ahead and use some more of that anti-spatter stuff. We'll spray it all in here, and we will spray the round stock to try to keep any like boogers and stuff off of it. So let's go ahead and get set up, and we will finish weld all of those. Alright guys, so we just got done welding the pipe and the round stock onto the sides for our guides there. Everything seems to be working pretty good, still moves very freely. You just got to keep that top plate pretty level, which is to be expected. So the next thing that we need to work on is a way for the press to actually put pressure to it and keep it pretty level. So I think what we're going to do is weld a thick piece of flat plate right here, and then we've got a collar that I just worked with to fit the big pin on the press to locate it on that plate. This collar is 1.5 inch, but you actually need a 1 9/16. I was able to work this one down to 1 9/16, so now it fits the press nicely. So we'll be able to use this one. So the next step is going to be cutting a piece of plate to weld here, and then once we get that cut, we'll take this and the plate over to the press, get everything located where we want it, tack it up, make sure it's good to go, and then finish weld it and give this thing a try. So let's head over to the bandsaw. Alright guys, so we got this whole thing set up in the press here. We went ahead and got the 1/4 inch plate that we just cut, and then we've got the collar on top of that. I didn't go crazy measuring trying to center this thing. I kind of just eyeballed it and then put some tension on the press here to get it to sit how it's going to want it. So now we're going to grab the welder and we're just going to go ahead and tack this thing up, and then we should be able to give this thing a trial run. So let's get it welded. Alright guys, so we got everything tacked up here. Let's go ahead and back off this thing. I got this set screw tight, and hopefully it comes up with it, and then if it does, we will go ahead and try bending a piece of aluminum real quick. Seems to go up pretty even. So I set the aluminum in there. See if it's going down level. Feels like it. See how it bends this aluminum. I don't even have that much force on the actual hand pump here. It's like, yeah, it's like 2 fingers. Alright, let's go ahead and slowly back off it and see what happens here. Look at that. It actually looks like it goes a little bit past 90, which is pretty cool. So we'll have to remember that. Stop it a little bit before it's like full bottomed out. Hell yeah, that's awesome, guys. Alright, let's go ahead and pop this thing out of here and finish weld this plate in the collar. And we'll try it with a little bit bigger piece of aluminum. Alright guys, so I made a decision here to try to go ahead and stiffen this thing up a little bit more so that we don't have to worry about the angle iron itself bending when trying to press on some thicker metal. So I just went ahead and cut a couple more pieces of the 1/4 inch plate, and we're just going to weld all the seams up underneath, everywhere, all the way around them, and that should give the angle iron that we're using a lot more rigidity. The angle iron is 3/16, so it's pretty strong to begin with, but I think backing it with this 1/4 inch plate is going to help a lot. So let's go ahead and get these things welded up. Alright guys, so I went ahead and welded those 1/4 inch plates on real quick. We got that all taken care of. So now let's go ahead and throw a piece of actual steel in here and see if we can bend it up. So we've got some 1/8 inch plate here. This is just regular mild steel. We're going to go ahead and put it in our little break here. I'm going to just put it to the edge so that we're not wasting a whole bunch of it just for testing here. But we've got it lined up pretty decent. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Once we get it started like that, I'm going to go ahead and put our digital angle finder on there just for curiosity. It's 45-ish right there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's 45-ish. So that should give us about 90. So let's go ahead and back off of this. Only got one hand here, so. Well, there you have it, guys. Bent it pretty good. I didn't put it in perfectly straight or anything, but that's a pretty decent 90. Kind of rolled the edge a little bit, didn't like rip it or anything like that, so that's pretty good. Play with it a little bit more. We could have gone a little bit further with it, it looks like. It doesn't look like a true 90, but I was just guessing with our gauge there. So I'm super happy with that. I think this thing turned out phenomenal for what it is that we built here. I think For building it out of scrap metal that we had laying around, this thing is going to do everything that we need it to do, and it's going to bend a lot thicker metal than that Harbor Freight brake that we were using. That one was really limited on the thickness of a material that we could work with, so I think all in all this was definitely worth building, especially since it only cost me a couple dollars in miscellaneous things that we actually had to buy. Everything else we just had laying around, so super happy about that, guys. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. That way you get notified anytime we put out a video with the GTO, the Duramax, or the Hellcat, and we will catch you on the next one.